Hey guys, this is Coach Lowe, and this is Chapter 8 review, and this will be in 2 sections. So let's get started with Part 1. We'll go through about 11 problems, and then we'll switch over and look at the rest of them on the second part of the video. So starting with number 1, when they ask us for geometric mean, remember the geometric mean between two numbers, our shortcut was multiply a and b, and then we're going to take the square root because this was x squared equals ab, and that was from the proportions that we had set up. So we had x over a equals b over x and cross multiplied set of proportions. So anytime you have square roots like this, you can think about it like this if you want to, and go ahead and multiply these two numbers together and then take the square root. So don't let the square root of 6 on both of those get you. All right, so let's say that this is a and this is b. So 3 times the square root of 6 multiplied by 5 times the square root of 6, and that'll be 15. 3 times 5 is 15. Square root of 6 multiplied by the square root of 6 is 6, because the square root of 6 times the square root of 6 is the square root of 36, and we know that the square root of 36 is 6, making this 90. So now we can stick it under here. So x equals the square root of 90, or remember 90 is 9 times 10. This is a perfect square. The square root of 9 is 3 times the square root of 10. So number 1, 3 times the square root of 10. All right, let's move on to number 2. All right, so we have a right angle here, and then we see this being drawn across as the altitude of this triangle, another right angle. So we know that we can deal with the geometric mean here, that the altitude or the height of this triangle is the square root of this piece multiplied by this piece. Well, we have this smaller piece, it's 8. This piece right here we don't have, but we know that the whole thing is x. So let's say that x is 20. To find this piece, we would do 20 minus 8. Let's say that x is 11. To find this piece, we would do 11 minus 8. So whatever this is, we would subtract 8 from it to find this little blue piece right here. So this is whatever that long one is, minus 8. All right, so now we can set up the geometric mean. 12 is equal to the square root of 8 multiplied by x minus 8. And so a couple of options here. I just went ahead and squared this to get rid of the square root because I don't really like it. It looks kind of messy. So let's clean up as much as we can. Squaring a square root just gets rid of the square root. It undoes it. And so now we square the 12, which is 144. And on the right side, 8 times x minus 8, and now we have an equation to solve. So let's use distributive property here. 144 equals 8x minus 64. Add 64 to both sides and then divide by 8, and we will be finished. So 208 equals 8x, and then dividing both sides by 8, that will go twice, so 26. X is 26. All right, and the instruction said find x, so we can stop there. All right, let's move on to number 3. Number 3 wants, again, another right triangle. We have an altitude drawn, and we're trying to find the leg. So the leg, the ratio for the leg, or we can use the geometric mean for the leg also. It's the product of 3, or the leg that touches it, and then the entire length of this base. All right, so it's the square root, or the geometric mean, between 3 and this whole length. So 3 plus 10, which is 13. So x is the square root of 39. All right, number 4. So looking at this, ask yourself the question, do I have a right triangle? Yes. Do I have an altitude drawn from the right angle? No, I don't. There's no altitude drawn from this right angle. All right, so let's just focus on the right triangle. I see that we're trying to find the hypotenuse. I'm given the length of the legs, Pythagorean theorem. So x squared equals 80 squared plus 30 squared. So x squared is 6,400 plus 900. So x squared is 7,200. Then we take the square root to get rid of the square. So x is 10, 30, that'd be 30, 60 times the square root of 2. That was off the top of my head. That's scary, isn't it? About 84.85. All right. We could also break this down if we wanted to. So we'd have 200, that would be 100. So we know that's a square root of 10. And this would be 72. This is 9 times 8. This is 4 times 2. So we have a 10, a 3, and a 2 that would come out because this is 10 times 10, 3 times 3, 2 times 2 can take the square root of all of those. So I have a 10 and a 3 and a 2, which makes 60, and then a square root of 2 staying in. But you can just do 84.85. That's totally fine with me as well. All right, number 5, we are looking at an equilateral triangle. When we drop this on an equilateral triangle, it cuts the side into 2 equal lengths. And so from here, did we drop this from a right angle? The answer is no. So we cannot use geometric mean. However, we do have a right triangle, and it's a 30-60 right. So you can use your special stuff on a 30-60 right, or we can use Pythagorean theorem because there's not an angle involved, only sides. But I do know that this is a 2a and a times the square root of 3. So I know this is going to be 12 times the square root of 3 since a is 12. You can also go ahead and work through the Pythagorean theorem if you want. So we would have x squared plus 12 squared equals 24 squared. So x squared plus 144 equals 24 squared, which is 576. So x squared equals 576 minus 144. So that is 432. And that's x squared. And then take the square root of both sides. And so x is a square root of 432, or 12 times the square root of 3 when you break that down. All right, let's keep going. All right, for number 6. Find x. All right, so you need to back off of the problem for just a second. What are we dealing with? Well, we have a square. I see all sides are the same length. I have a right angle here, which forces all of these to be right angles. So I am dealing with a square. I know on this diagonal that it's 30 long, but it also bisects those angles. So these are 45-degree angles. So 30 goes with the side. I have a 45-45 right triangle. I know some special things about 45-45 right triangles. These sides are a, and this is a times the square root of 2 for the diagonal. So now they've given me 30, which is an a times the square root of 2 slot. So I can set those equal to each other and then divide both sides by the square root of 2. So 30 divided by the square root of 2 equals a. And then we can rationalize to get that square root of 2 off the bottom. 30 times the square root of 2 over 2 is a. And then reducing that, 15 square roots of 2 is a. All right, so that is the value of x. It's in that same spot. So x is 15 times the square root of 2. All right, number 7. In this parallelogram, AD is 14. The measure of angle D is 60 degrees. All right, so this should be like bells, whistles, red flag, 30, 60, right triangle. Right, so special triangle, 30, 60, right triangle. So I know opposite the 30 is A. I know opposite the 60 is a times the square root of 3, and I know opposite 90 is 2a. If you don't know those by heart, please work on those tonight and know those tomorrow. All right, so if 2a is in the 14 spot, so 2a is equal to 14, then a is 7. All right, so a is 7, and then, but they wanted to know AF. So a is 7, we could just plug it into this guy. A times the square root of 3, we know that a is 7, so 7 times the square root of 3 is the value of AF. All right, find x and y. All right, again, let's target this triangle. So there's a 30, 60 right triangle, and I'm given the side that's opposite 90 degrees. All right, so this is 2a. So I know a is 4 times the square root of 3 because 2a equals 8 times the square root of 3. Dividing by 2, a is 4 times the square root of 3. All right, so we have that taken care of. This is a 60-degree angle, so that means this is a times the square root of 3. Well, we know what a is. A is 4 times the square root of 3. So to find this side, which is a times the square root of 3, we will plug in what we found for a, 4 times the square root of 3, and multiply it by the square root of 3, which is a cool thing. Square root of 3 times the square root of 3 is the square root of 9, which is 3. So that makes that side 12. Get a little eraser going on here. All right, so I'm going to work on this other triangle. X is 12. And then let's move over to this triangle, 30, 60, right triangle again. Now 12 is opposite the 30 degrees. Remember, 12 is A. And then opposite 90 is 2A, so Y is in the 2A slot. So if A is 12, then 2A is 2 times 12, which is 24. So Y is 24. All right. Find X to the nearest tenth. All right, so things that we want to check. I see that we're dealing with a right triangle. Do I have an altitude drawn from the right angle? No, I don't. All right, so that's out. Number 2, am I dealing with a 30, 60 right triangle, special triangle, 30, 60 right or 45, 45 right? No, I am not. But I am dealing with a right triangle. All right, so in this right triangle, am I given 2 of the 3 sides and I could use Pythagorean theorem? No, I'm actually given an angle and a side and I want to find the other side. So this makes me think, how about some SOHCAHTOA? So sine is opposite over the hypotenuse, cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, tangent is opposite over adjacent. If you don't know those, you need to know those tomorrow. Work on those tonight. All right, so from this angle, I have the hypotenuse, or I'm looking for the hypotenuse. It's opposite the right angle. I am not given the opposite side, but I am given the adjacent side. Adjacent hypotenuse with an angle is cosine. So I have cosine of the angle, which is 16 degrees, is equal to adjacent over the hypotenuse. All right, and then cross multiplying or multiplying by x and dividing by cosine 16, I get x equals 8.3 divided by cosine of 16 degrees. All right, and you should get 8.6 for that, rounding to the nearest tenth. Pay attention to what the instructions are telling you to round to. All right, 2 more and then we'll take a little break. Number 10, an A-frame house is 45 feet high and 32 feet wide. Find the measure of the angle that the roof makes with the floor. All right, so if this is an A-frame house, it's symmetric on both sides of this A-frame. This is 45 feet. This is a right angle. That makes this 16. So what am I dealing with? I want to find this angle. What pieces am I given to this puzzle? Well, I don't have the hypotenuse. There's my right angle, no hypotenuse, but I do have the opposite and the adjacent side. So that means I have tangent x equals opposite of that angle, 45, divided by the side length that's adjacent, 16. I am looking for the angle measure, which means I need to use inverse tangent to solve for x. So I have x equals tangent inverse, or inverse tangent, 45 divided by 16. So now we're going to push second tangent on your calculator. So inverse tangent, 45 divided by 16, and we see that x is 70 degrees. So that's the angle that the floor and the roof makes. So the roof makes with the floor. All right, last one on this video. A 38-foot tree casts a 16-foot shadow. So here's the tree, 38 feet, and a 16-foot shadow. 16 feet. Find the measure of the angle of elevation of the sun to the nearest degree. So the sun's over here. Has to be because the shadow is being cast this direction. Angle of elevation of the sun. So we want this angle of elevation going up toward the sun. All right, this is a right angle. We want this angle here. So let's see what we're given. This is the hypotenuse. From this angle, this is the opposite side, and this is adjacent because it's helping form the angle. So this is tangent. Tangent of some angle is 38 divided by 16, or theta is equal to tangent inverse of 38 divided by 16. So that angle measure, or x, is equal to 67 degrees. All right, guys, that's the end of part 1. That's questions 1 through 11. And we'll catch 12 through 20 on part 2 of the video. This is Coach Lowe, and I'm out.